For many years, the name Julian Lennon has been synonymous with fame, success, riches, and a musical talent very few others share. But do you know anything about the darkness behind his glamorous and seemingly happy life? Julian's onstage performances create a very positive, full of energy and radiant image of the shining star, but his childhood has been anything but happy. In fact, it was quite traumatic, and much of this can be credited to his absent father and the poor relationship Julian had with him. Julian's father, John Lennon, has undeniably left an incredible mark on popular culture and music. Alongside Paul McCartney, he formed one of the most iconic songwriting duos in history. He was also a notable member of the famous music band The Beatles. Simply put, he was a great singer with a loyal fandom and was just as valued by his band members, but when it came to fatherhood, his son did not have many good things to say about him. Yes, the excellent singer we have all loved so profoundly was not as excellent at fatherhood. This can sound like a harsh thing to say, but this is what his own son has confessed to the public. Although the two have not been very vocal about their relationship, we do have some interviews in which Julian has been very raw and has shared the not-so-happy aspects of his childhood. In one interview during which Julian was 48 years old, he shared that he was not thinking about getting married or having kids, and explained that he felt this way because his father, John Lennon, was young and didn't know what he was doing when he had kids. Julian didn't want to make the same mistake. He wanted to figure out who he was before taking on those responsibilities. This alone speaks volumes about the type of relationship he had with his father. Now, these bold statements would make just about anyone wonder what John did that caused such a rift between them and convinced Julian not to give fatherhood a shot, just because he was worried he would end up being like his dad. So to gain a better perspective, let's have a look at their family dynamics. John and his wife Cynthia had Julian in 1963. When Julian was born, John was only 23 and Cynthia was 24. However, by the end of the 1960s, John left Cynthia for another woman named Yoko Ono. He went on to marry her, settled down, and created his own little family with her, while Cynthia and Julian were left completely alone to fend for themselves. As a young innocent child, Julian was completely shattered by his father's departure and has not kept this a secret. He has openly spoken about the strong emotions he felt as a child after he felt abandoned by his biological father, and explained how it felt like his father had literally disappeared off the face of the planet after he left. Further commenting on John and his second wife Yoko Ono's very public love affair, Julian remarked how it made him feel as though his mum and him had been cast aside. But at the same time, he has added that not everyone forgot about him and his mom during their hard times, and even shared a story about how Paul McCartney wrote the song Hey Jules after dropping in to check on him and his mom. The title of the song later was changed to Hey Jude. After this, Julian admitted he had little contact with his father. He spent about 10 years with absolutely no contact with him, and it was only after Cynthia tried to mend Julian's relationship with his dad that the two reconnected. According to the Irish Times, after leaving Julian, John once even told him that Sean, his other son, was born out of love, while Julian was born out of a night of drinking. This shows how John saw the 13-year gap between his two sons, and also reveals a side of him that was not very kind, despite his public image as someone who advocated for love and peace. Julian, too, has expressed his frustration on his father's public preaching of peace and love, stating that he never experienced the peace and love his father talked about. In a 1998 interview with The Telegraph, he labeled his father a hypocrite and added that John may be a person who preached about peace on earth in front of the public, but had no love for those who were in his life, namely him and Julian's mother Cynthia. So a quick observation of some online interviews in which Julian has spoken about his dad tells us that he saw him as a bad dad, and honestly, it's not surprising. At the same time, though, it's interesting to know that Julian didn't have any hard feelings towards his dad's second family. Julian has even claimed that he got along well with Yoko Ono's son, Sean Lennon, although Sean might not be as interested in staying connected. He also admires Yoko Ono, even if they don't always see eye to eye. Regardless, it's safe to say that Julian clearly got some of his dad's artistic genes, as he is a talented photographer, musician, documentary filmmaker, and philanthropist, but what he could not get from him was his love, kindness, and time. Now, we have spoken a lot about the tragedies of Julian's life, but the truth is that his dad, although played the role of a villain in his son's life, had a lot of struggles and battles of his own. Much like his son John's, time in this world too was far from blissful. In fact, his personal life was filled with chaos and disastrous events, some caused by his cruel fate and others caused by his own reckless actions. John faced a lot of problems because of his substance abuse issues. Many people believe that this also affected his performance as a singer and played a notable role in breaking up the Beatles. John was extremely addicted to heroin in 1969, and during this time opioid addiction was poorly understood. George Harrison, Paul McCartney, and Ringo Starr watched in increasing alarm as Lennon and Yoko Ono openly consumed it. The three recognized this as something much more far out than they were willing to get. So it wasn't too shocking that this led to conflicts, and in no time the band fell apart and probably brought with it a lot of sadness for John, who spent the majority of his good days working hard to take it to new heights. And it's almost impossible to talk about the tragedies John faced without also addressing the horrible way in which his life ended. John was ruthlessly assassinated by Mark David Chapman, who gunned the 40-year-old musician down in front of his own home on December 8, 1980. What's crazy about this is that this wasn't the first time Lennon and Chapman had met each other. At about 4:30 p.m. on the day of his murder, a young, weirdly timid fan approached Lennon on the street. During his short encounter with him, John signed the double fantasy album the fan was holding and clicked a few photos with him. But after just a little over 6 hours later, the man attacked John with 5 hollow-point bullets while he was still holding the signed album. In a final interview before his death, John expressed his desire to mend his relationship with his son, but sadly he was murdered before this could happen. In the years that followed, Julian stated that he had forgiven his father, but later admitted that this wasn't entirely true. He clarified that his forgiveness was only in words and that he struggled with complex feelings about his father. At the same time, it's also true that Julian has spoken up about how his relationship with John was showing signs of improvement before his untimely passing. He disclosed that John was in a happier place and had expressed a genuine desire to reconnect with him and the rest of the family. Later on, Julian even admitted that he feels like his career has helped him understand his dad better. After John's death, Julian also shared some heartwarming memories of the time he spent with his father. He fondly recalled the late 1960s at his childhood home in Kenwood, where he believes he unknowingly witnessed some of the greatest musicians in the world come and go through the house. Speaking to journalist Joshua David Stein, Julian described the house as a place where many joyous memories were created. Julian also said that as a young boy he believed that his dad was very happy with their family, their home, and his place in the world, and that it was very unexpected the way everything changed so suddenly. So what do you think? Was Julian's poor relationship with his dad a loss that he truly never moved on from and just carried its burden with him for the rest of his life?